In the dungeons we slay, in the dragon's den we play. Raise a glass to the heroes who battle night and day. With a fiddle and a hurdy-gurdy, we'll sing the tales of old. In the tavern we gather, where the stories unfold.
So, Ed, you go first because nobody knows who you are.
Okay, right. Yes, I'm the man who needs no introduction. Are we recording? Because the thing didn't tell me. The nice little lady didn't come on and tell me.
Yes, we are recording. It says it's
Good.
recording. Mhm.
Excellent. Okay, so hi, my name's Ed Greenwood. I am older than dirt and over, geez. Um, okay, far longer ago than I can count these days because I'm a confused senior, I created something called the Forgotten Realms. And so therefore, everything we talk about tonight is my fault.
Perfect. And Curry, or as we like to call you, the better looking Jeff.
That's right. The currently Curry the unbearded. So
There you go. And
It's
yeah,
a clever disguise, isn't it?
yeah. Curry, producer of the show, co-host with Jeff of the Mages and Sages podcast, and perpetual Dingleberry tag-along fangirl to all of you great people.
cool. And George.
Hi, I'm George. Um,
And there's only one in all of Australia.
in the whole of Australia. That's right. I'm from Australia, as you may have gleaned by now, and a fan of the Forgotten Realms. Every once in a while, I write something. I had the great joy of helping with this product.
More than helping. And Tom?
I'm like George, except I'm not Australian.
But you can fake it.
So I've also been a huge fan of the Realms since its inception, or since its published inception, and I've had the opportunity to write a few things in play in the sandbox over the years.
Cool. And I'm Eric Boyd. I also am a fan of the Realms and have been since Ed started writing his dragon articles and luring us in. And then when I first got that map in the coming soon box set, like that pre-map, I forget where I got that from, if it was in Dragon or whatever.
Dragon.
Yeah, hooked ever since. Totally hooked. And so this has been another fun thing to do with all of you working on this. So what we're talking about tonight is the Uthgardt. And we should probably start by saying where they came from, and then we'll talk about the product a little bit. So Ed, you might be the best position to talk about what you had originally and what Janelle added in FR5 and how we got to where we're at.
Okay, right. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. No, okay. I wanted to have barbarians in the realms as a, 5-year-old kid. Not just because of Conan and the Noble Savage and all the cool stuff, although I was reading all of Howard's tales in my father's magazines and thinking these are cool. Um, the It was because I wanted to have a sorry, Jeff, but I can do this because he's not here to defend himself. The Mutt and Jeff combination of having Durnan and Mert together in the earliest Realm stories, and it was I saw Durnan as a sort of thinking man's Conan, as in he wasn't a savage. He was quite familiar with, and he, unlike the brutish versions of barbarians that various authors gave us in the pulps, um, Durnan could think on his feet quite nicely. But it was the fact that they were oil and water and yet were friends that made them an interesting thing to write about. So I knew I wanted to have barbarians in the realms, and we were on the Sword Coast when I was started writing about the realms. So there were barbarians north, the northern part of the Sword Coast, and beyond that, I hadn't thought about it much, other than um, and you can find this in the notes to the very, very early um, NPCs of the realms that I was asked to write up and send in to TSR, that we had some real fish out of water barbarians who are like wandering around Waterdeep and so on, going, "Wow, never seen building this big," that sort of stuff, because they are literally on their sort of coming of age pilgrimage, go adventuring thing from their tribe.
Janzabar from FR1 was one of those, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I had all that in it, but more than that, I hadn't worked out the barbarians all that much. And when TSR started publishing the realms, the first product that I was asked to do in the realms, because Jeff and Karen put together the old gray box, and I was given the Five Shires to write, to learn how TSR did the procedure with the blank forms and everything for doing modules. And they were cobbling together the old gray box from my notes. But the first thing I was asked to write was FR1 Waterdeep in the North. And I, said to Jeff, Jeff, 64 pages? I mean, the North is huge. It's like the size of the continental United States.
Right.
And Waterdeep isn't the village of Hamlet, 4 buildings. It's a city. It's huge. And which is where we got the mouse type that makes our aged eyes weep today, because that was how I managed to cram it in. And we covered the North in a few pages and shoved it out. And that's where Janelle came in, because she was tasked with taking all the stuff that wouldn't fit and putting it in a product that became FR5, the Savage North. And she came up with the barbarians. And I thought she did a really cool job in that I was sort of standing on guard as TSR started working in the realms for things that didn't fit, things that sounded way too modern, like the Harper Troopers we got later on in the Time of Troubles and so on. But when Janelle came up with a culture for the various tribes, I was pleased with it. I thought, oh, this is cool. This doesn't trigger my that's not the realms filter. So, and all of that stuff with Sky Pony Tribe and Grandfather Tree and all that stuff is Janelle. And that's how the Uthgardt got their start.
That's great. I know for me, because I've been running a campaign in the North for a while that you're all familiar with. And obviously you can't really run a good campaign in the Savage North without dealing with the Uthgardt, right? And what Janelle had put in, I mean, she didn't have that much space either. I mean, we wrote 78 pages. That's longer than all of FR5, right?
Yes.
Just on the Uthgardt. So she did not have that many pages, but, she set up some, to my mind, some conflicts that kind of drove most of it. So those conflicts included the fact that they were kind of stereotypical barbarians, hating magic, that kind of thing. On the other hand, they were very clearly of Netherese descent, right? So there's your first conflict, that somehow you have the descendants hating everything about their ancestors. So where did that come from? The second conflict is she very clearly set off, the North kind of follows, I think, your vision, Ed, for like, a bunch of independent city-states as opposed to kingdoms, right?
Yeah.
But then you have the Uthgardt, who are living in the areas in between the city-states and disliking the whole concept of civilization, right? So that added some conflict, and that was further nurtured by one of your pages from the Mages when you did the Covenant and talked about, wizards of the North manipulating the barbarians to defend the cities against the orcs that threatened to overrun the cities, right? So there's like all these different layers of complication right there, I thought, from the start. And then, you added in some sometimes it made sense and sometimes it was odd. Janelle included favorite enemies, and they weren't always the ones that you thought they would be for the different tribes. So it wasn't obvious why the elk tribe hated what they hated, or the griffin tribe hated what they hated, right? So that was a conflict built in. And then, last but not least, there's also there was a conflict built in where some of the Uthgardt are actually sort of worshiping their totem and worshiping Uthgar, and others are very clearly rejecting that for the Faerunian pantheon, the Black Lion tribe in particular. And so all of these things made for a very complicated, and complicated is a good thing for a DM, and confusing, which me trying to untangle stuff always, I'm like, I got to figure this out now, right? But it ended up being a ton of conflict. I don't know, Tom or George, you want to add anything?
I'd just like to add that, pardon me, that many, many years ago, well over nearly 20, I think, Eric and I had some fun with the history of the North in the context of the Fallen Kingdom. And that was supposed to be about the Forgotten Realms Encyclopedia project that never ultimately was published, but a lot of people, including Tom, did a heck of a lot of work on to see whether it was feasible and whether it was going to happen. And Eric and I, back in 1998, a long, long time ago, started talking about the Fallen Kingdom and dealing with the sources relating to that part of the very small part of the realms. As part of that, as these things happen, I got a bit excited and started broadening out the history, and for whatever reason got excited by old Ilusk, which is now Luskan in the present day realms. And as part of that, looking at FR5, the Savage Frontier, you have to blame me for Uthgar and the date of his deification. It was something so fundamental to that story that it just had to be given a date. People who know me know that I really don't like talking about the gods in Faerun, except in the abstract. But in this particular occasion, I weakened and I gave him a date, and that obviously formed the pivot point for the history of the Uthgardt tribes, and probably was the beginning. What we didn't know when we started writing this project was that we weren't going to be starting at the beginning. We were going to start before the beginning.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add there. I guess, like talking about the beginning, I mean, I think it's also making me think about like the gods, about, the origin story that you worked up about the various Uthgardt pantheon that evolved. And how there's the various travelers and the others, and how Uthgardt was just one manifestation of those heroes that arose from the various gods. And so it's interesting to see that evolution over time, and how you and George built on so much of what Janelle and Ed started.
Yeah, so for folks wondering about that, there's a sidebar there where I talked about the Ruathan pantheon. And so, like, if you look at the modern realms, right, we have this giant pantheon that has swallowed almost all human gods except for Mulhorand and Unther, and that's about it. And so, but if you work backwards, you can envision that there are different regional pantheons that got subsumed together. And so we came up with the idea that because the gods of fury played such a big role in the North, that they were kind of the bad guys, right? You don't want to have Bane be the bad guy literally across all of Faerun, right? It's better if different regions have, this one Talos is the bad guy, this one Shar is the bad guy, you know what I mean? And so the idea was the gods of fury were all super powerful. What's a different way of thinking of pantheon that's different than how the Faerunian pantheon is turned into? And the idea we came up with was sort of like, there's this revolving cast of hero gods who are weaker than the gods of fury, but stand up for humanity against the gods of fury. And that kind of turns the normal, a lot of people build a pantheon where the head honcho god is also like lawful and good, right? And we were trying to say, no, what happens if it was the other way around? If the most powerful gods are the gods of fury, but you do have some heroes who stand up to them from time to time. And so Uthgardt is another example of that. So that was kind of fun to play with.
Very, very. It's very Howard-like in some ways. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, with Crom and some of the other gods of Conan's myth.
Mm. And one thing I want to mention to the world, being as we're on this topic, um, Janelle was on staff and was on staff as an artist, and this was the sort of fledgling. Oh, you can design stuff too, you know. I mean, we're going to give you the chance in house. Um, and of course, part of the uneasy process of giving someone a chance in house is you may end up stuck with whatever they write. Well, because the company deadlines are so short that there's no time for major rewrites. You know, you just got to run with it. And so Jeff had a talk with Janelle, I think at lunch in the cafeteria. Um, why? As in, some of these contradictions with the Uthgardt. You know, why are they against cities and yet, you know, blah 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 blah. And um, he then turned around in our weekly calls, where he would call up to the public library in Canada, where I was toiling, and we talk. He said, "Okay, what do you think about, you know, these?" And he pulled up some of the contradictions. And I said, "Well, okay, the first thing we have to make very clear, and I don't know how clearly it came across in the published realms, because I was always dealing with the versions of the products that we were hammering out, not the versions of the products at the end you got to buy and read if you went into your hobby shop. Um, but I wanted it clear that, okay, just because they're barbarians, and barbarians from the point of view of the people in the civilized cities, it doesn't mean they're stupid, and it doesn't mean that they are ignorant of the world around them or unable to comprehend what they're seeing. Oh, must all be magic. Oh, powerful magic, stay away. The sort of grunt stuff that you get, particularly Hollywood, dealing, you know, with the quote Wild West, you know, and uh, reinforces that idea. I wanted it fairly clear from the beginning that the Uthgardt were very smart, which is how they managed to survive the severe conditions under which they lived. And one of the things about being very smart is they saw the usefulness of the cities. They thought it was stupid because the whole point of the Uthgardt is they're nomadic. And they're nomadic because there's not enough ground cover and forage, and the herds that they dine on move, so they have to move. Somewhat like the native peoples in North America. But also, they think it's really stupid to stay in one place and use up all your resources. And then, but they also realize we can't fight these people. There are too many of them, and we're busy just trying to stay alive. So we're not going to be able to move them from this pig-headed view they have of staying in one spot. Okay, let's make use of it. They are very, very useful supply dumps because they won't move. We know where to, like, if it's a howling blizzard, the horses know the way. Uh, or whatever. Our trackers know the way. We can stumble through the blinding whiteout and go to a place that has food and trade stuff for it, like our furs, because everybody's cold up here. Blah 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 blah. So you have the Uthgardt making use of the quote civilized world, just as the civilized world is making use of what the Uthgardt can bring, and using them as paid guides. You know, if you're an adventurer and you're looking for a lost city or a mine that the dwarves um, speak of, but there are not enough dwarves left to mine it. Okay, maybe we can go and find that stuff. You will hire the local Uthgardt who know the area, If you can, avoid having the Uthgardt kill you, on general principles, we don't want anybody messing with that mine. Thank you very much. But all right, sure. Crazy people are going to kill themselves in the cold anyway. Yeah, we'll take money off them and take them there. There you go. There's your mine. Have fun. See you in the spring. We'll look for your frozen bodies. You know, so I wanted the Uthgardt from the beginning to not be stupid. They could be the noble savages if you wanted to play them that way as a dungeon master. But the one thing they were not was stupid because, and it isn't like, oh, I'm enlightened and woke and all that stuff. It's as a DM, that makes them way more interesting at the table. It gives them way more agency, and it it gives any dungeon master way more plot hooks to work with. And that's everything in the realms that um, that I had a hand in designing after the initial put the world together. The moment that TSR was involved and D&D was involved, I was always trying to give maximum adventure possibilities, maximum plot hooks. So if something is the way it is, it's probably there because I thought, oh, may you live in interesting times. It'll be more interesting if I do it this way. Now I'll shut up because otherwise I'll go on all night.
Oh, that's really helpful, Ed. So, talking about like their origins and how they're not stupid, George, you were hinting at this earlier, but can you talk a little bit about the fact that we started before Uthgar, and Beirun and Beoruni and Bay of Runlatha, all those different sort of convergent names, and a little bit of how that played into the history.
With swords and shields we march across the land we've known. With a fiddle and a hurdy-gurdy, we'll dance around the fire. In the tavern we revel, let the spirit take us higher.
La 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 la